devil is amongst us. Stay back, boy. This calls for divine intervention. I kick ass for the Lord.
People do not come out to vote for U.S. Senate. They come out to vote for Sheriff and County Commissioner. Lyndon B. Johnson. All politics is local. Speaker of the House Tip O'Neill. Let's talk about local politics. Welcome to Heresy and Hearsay, a podcast to reclaim faith in the context of political discussion. I'm Reverend Barney, and you can follow me on Twitter at SethRothII. I also now have a Twitch, which is Daniel_Rev_Barney, which I'll do live streams for political events. Next week, for example, we will be doing the vice presidential debate. You can also follow the show on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and any podcast catcher. Just look for Heresy and Hearsay. Please like, share, subscribe, and follow us. Also give us a review that helps others find us. And I will be doing this again today solo. But you can find my partner and better half of the podcast, September, on her own Twitch and Twitter at 9 of 12. That's NINEOF12. And you can hear her on the Geek Grills podcast. She also is helping get the vote out for the Biden-Harris campaign. Heresy and Hearsay has a Patreon site where you can find us at patreon.com/heresy and hearsay, where you can visit and help support. Just $2 a month goes a long way to help make this humble show. You can also contribute bits and Twitch, or subscribe for free if you have Amazon Prime, or pay for a subscription if you would like. We also have a website at www.heresyandhearsay.com, where you can view all of our previous shows and everything else. So today, let me do, of course, the typical house cleaning as far as what needs to be talked about. So next week, again, there'll be two shows. There'll be the regular show will come out first this time, which will be the show about religion and how it has been manipulated over the past 30, 40 years by the GOP. I'm not going to give a full history lesson, but I'm mainly going to focus on the last 4 years especially. This will probably be the more angry episode of the episode, and I apologize in advance. But this is where I get the most passionate. This is why I started this podcast, was to try to reclaim my faith from those who were twisting it and using it for evil, is the best term I can use at this point. So that's what I'm the most passionate about. So hitting that topic will be interesting. On Wednesday night, we will then do the vice presidential debate, which, if you were listening, or if you have listened to my coverage, it is on the YouTube channel, and it will be up in the podcast form eventually when September gets a chance to put it up. She is very busy with the Biden-Harris campaign right now, but when she gets a chance to put it up, she will definitely put that up on the podcast form. It is an extremely long, it's almost 3 hours, because I would stop it and talk about it. If you guys went through that, and we'll get to that a little bit later, I appreciate you listening, and I also appreciate, hopefully the vice presidential debate will not be as painful. That's all I have to say about that. And we'll be doing that. After that, I'm kind of a blank right now as far as what the next topics will be. Basically, we'll probably cover, I'll probably do an overall review over the past two debates on the following week's show, kind of hit some high points or low points of those two debates, cover what was discussed, and also give you a preview of the Thursday night debate, because I won't be able to do live broadcasting for those two for the last two presidential debates, because they're both on Thursday nights, and they are both NC and I have a day job, and I won't be able to get off in time to do those. So I apologize in advance for that. So you won't get to hear my dulcet tones for 2.5 hours on that situation. And then we'll go from there as we get closer. Today, by the way, as far as me recording, it is currently September 30th. So don't forget to wake up Green Day tomorrow because September is ending. Sorry, that's a joke. Anyways, got to find humor somewhere. So let's talk about, first off, what I want to, now let's get into the show. So first off, let's talk about why local politics are important and why the GOP lately has been eating everybody else's lunch, not just the Democratic parties, but everybody's. And this has been something that's been brought up a lot, is money in local politics. Big donors have focused a good deal of their big donor money to local politics, as far as on the conservative side. And that has not translated as much on the Democratic side. Unfortunately, and I hate to say this, but the Democrats have a similar, what I can tell, and this is again where September would probably slap me in my hand and tell me, no, I'm wrong. But they're outwardly, from news reports and everything, looking at it, it looks like the Democratic Party doesn't focus enough on the local elections, doesn't focus on getting good local candidates out, doesn't look at financing and funding them. I know Obama was initially going to be setting up a organization to do that. I know that when Howard Dean had taken over the DNC for a while, he had focused on a 50-state initiative. And that's where the blue wave happened in 2006, and that's where the midterm with George W. Bush lost heavily. Lost not only the House but also lost the Senate, in pretty dramatic fashion, as far as that's concerned, because there was a focus on all 50 states and getting and winning those and getting wins in those states, and that was noticeable, and that is a strategy that the GOP runs every year. They try to get as many GOP congressmen and GOP senators in, even in states that they don't have a chance of winning in. They focus now. I mean, they don't focus on California and New York because those states are just, because of how they are just designed, as far as the urban structures and everything. They're not going to win senators, but they can win governors, and they have multiple times in the past won Republican governors. And it's that trickle down, because you can win the state houses, and if you can win the state houses, you control a lot of stuff. If you can win local elections, from county commissioners to school boards to everything else, you have a lot more control, and that bubbles up. You know, they talk about trickle-down economics, and that doesn't work. But bubbling up from the ground up, that's where you get that bench, and that's where you get the good candidates, and then they move up the ranks, and then they're tested and they're tried, and they've been the school board members, and they've been the county commissioners or the city commissioners, or the townsmen or whatever in these towns, and then they move up that ranking, and they've gotten experience, and by the time they get to running for representative, they know how to run a campaign better and everything else, versus, though, to be fair, in some situations, fresh blood, that's a bad term, there is a uniqueness for those individuals who are outside that system to step in. AOC is a prime example of that. She is extremely savvy, extremely intelligent, and she's also very hardworking. She went door to door, back in 2000, 2018, knocking on doors. And this was already a Democratic House. I mean, a Democratic seat. This was never going to change as far as the party alignment. It was going to be who was in there. And the incumbent had been there for years. And AOC went door to door. She had very little money, very little backing. She didn't have backing of the establishment. And she went door to door. And she still does that today. So she is, that's one of those examples of where that can work. Unfortunately, right now in this pandemic, going door to door is completely out of the question. But, I think when she handily won her primary, and at that point, it's really a no contest at that point. But you can see where that takes effect as far as local politics when, and there's a couple of things that I've posted as far as that's concerned about how in a school board election, how they wiped out an entire school board with the money that was raised by basically what was the name of that? I apologize. It was a conservative group that basically raised the money and got the individuals that weren't even up for re-election, got them recalled, so they clean slated it. And at that point, that's what they called it, Operation Clean Slate. Got 5 new people in there that they put in at that point because they were able to outspend them, which it's a school board election. You think, well, I'm not going to see ads on school boards. Obviously there were. And you see those little, and here's the thing. With school board elections, a little money goes a long way, because if you drive down the road or whatever and you see those little placards and it says so-and-so for school board, if you see enough of those, that'll stick in your mind. And most school board elections, for example, at least in my area, doesn't say if they're Republican or Democrat. You have to dig to find that information. And I suggest, and one of the things that we'll talk about a little bit later, is getting your sample ballot, taking a look at it, looking over the names on the sample ballot, especially when you're looking at those that are supposedly nonpartisan or those that don't have party listings, and finding out where they come from, where their money is coming from. But when you're looking at that money and you're looking at all of that, one of the things that you'll notice is that if you see more signs, they'll stick in your head more. And when you're voting for like a school board or something that, again, doesn't have the names listed on it, it's one of those situations where at that point you are more apt to vote for someone. Oh, well, I've seen their name on they must have some funding or whatever, and you don't know exactly where that money comes from. So, Reverend Barney, you ask, why is this important? It's a school board. What can they do? Well, they can decide what textbooks. They can decide what is being taught in the schools. They can decide who is hired as the superintendent and superintendent. They can decide, what curriculums are focused on more than other curriculums. All that is extremely important. If you get a school board that is more conservative, you'll get absent, because in certain states, it is up to the counties to decide how they teach certain curriculum. And you may get abstinent-only teaching for sex ed, or you may get a skewing view on the Civil War, to where they don't even where they barely breach or barely talk about slavery as a cause, as a reason for the Civil War. So these are things to keep in mind. So school boards seem innocuous, But that is a starting point, because then that's what the education is, and that's what the kids are being taught. And then if the kids are taught a less than truthful history, then when they get into the future and everything else, then they're less likely to believe what has actually been happening. And then you get voters who are less likely to believe what is being told to them as the truth, because it's the truth, because that is not what they were taught in school. And that filters down as far as when you look at county commissioners, they decide what is built and where. They decide how it's built. They decide, things of that nature. Of course, there's also state involvement in that as well. But that's why it's important for that kind of situation. So, with that being said, I'm not going to dig down into my school board, because that is my school board. But I'm going to talk a little bit about North Carolina politics for a little bit. This is not going to be as long of a show as typical, because first off, I did 3 hours last night. But more importantly, this is very specific to North Carolina as far as some of the information. But I wanted to give you an overarch view of the situation. And I also wanted to give a little hope. And I think North Carolina's numbers, when I start discussing numbers with you, I think that's going to give you hope, because of my years of experience. And again, I'm a novice when it comes to the political machinery, but just my years of experience of noticing certain trends and things like that, that when you look at certain things, there's certain reads you can come up with. And the one thing that is important is, if you look at when you look at polling, because polling, I know we're all like gun shy after the 2016 polling. We're all like, but that's not what any of the fucking polling said. So one of the things that I want you to understand is that while, except for 2016, most of the polling was fairly right as far as the down ballot. And that's where you need to look, because the down balloting is where you see more consistency and more honesty as far as because there are people that the presidential thing is wide and varied and scattershot, and people won't say that they're going to vote for Trump right now, and they still may. But when you look at the down ballot, that's where you start to see more consistent numbers, and that's where you start to see, oh, okay. So looking at the down ballot, looking at your governorships, if that's up, looking for lieutenant governors or whatever, looking at the down ballots, that makes a difference. A very big difference. Okay? So that's something you need to keep in mind. So let's talk about North Carolina. So Roy Cooper, who was just on today, again, this is the 30th of September, about us moving slowly into phase 3. I disagree, but whatever. We're past the point of boxing everything up now. So, anyways. But he has of course, someone running against him, and it's his lieutenant. Well, not his, but it's the lieutenant governor in the state of North Carolina. And I'll be honest with you, I kind of wish we did this for our national election for our president and vice president, that they were voted in separately. But that's just me. I understand why it's good to have both sides of that situation. I understand both sides of the argument. But in the state of North Carolina, you vote for your lieutenant governor separately than your governor. And in the state of North Carolina, typically, well, not typically, but normally it's the same party. But this particular time, we have a Democratic governor and we have a Republican lieutenant governor. And our lieutenant governor is Dan Forest. And his campaign slogan is "Run, Forrest, Run." Well, first off, someone really should contact the author of the Forrest Gump movies and have him do a cease and desist. But I hear those things are hard to do. But so Dan Forrest is a Trumpian and not very good at it. Well, he's just as good as Trump is at it, only he doesn't have the backing of a lot of people. First off, he tried to basically sue to stop the mask mandate. He also, he also basically, while he was in a church while he was at a church congregation, he says, "No other nation, my friends," this is Dan Forrest quote, and I'm quoting, "No other nations, my friends, will ever survive the diversity and multiculturalism that America faces today because of the lack of assimilation, because of its divisions, and because of identity politics." So basically, he was saying that unless they become more like the minority of people and lose their culture and loses everything about them, that they're going to basically, that the United States will crumble and fall. He also tried to. He also, at the beginning of COVID, was tried to basically fight against the closing of bars and restaurants during the start of the COVID-19, because of course he did, and he's just not been very good at any of this. He has. Since that, he actually sued to try to stop the executive orders, and he abandoned those. And just recently, he contacted William Barr to basically have William Barr's DOJ investigate the voting laws of North Carolina. Now, for those of you who are outside of the state or haven't been paying hugely much attention to North Carolina has been under a fight since about 2010, when the districts were redrawn, when the Republicans had control of the state house. And this is true. It came out, and this was on tape, that basically they were redrawn for racial reasons. And so, that was, against the law. And because of that, they basically had to redraw, and it's been in the courts for years since. We finally got a semi-decent map. It's not great. I'm still in a R+20 zone, and I have Virginia Fox as my representative now, which is so much worse, because she's just the greatest ever. Sarcasm, sarcasm, sarcasm. Anyways, so, and now he's wanting to pull us back into the courts and stuff, and especially considering the fact that we're already having that court issue with the whole mail-in ballot issue. And that's what this is about the mail-in ballots of the state of North Carolina, because the state of North Carolina allows for mail-in ballots, and it's basically you can just request an absentee balance. You don't really need a reason, but they're allowing COVID as a valid reason as well, to do mail-in ballots. And it's one of those you have to request. Whatever Donald Trump said last night is a bold-faced lie. You cannot get a ballot without a request first. They don't just send you a ballot arbitrarily. You have, and it is barcoded and everything. And we've been over that in our voting episode. So, and we'll probably go over it again. I'm going to see if I can get September on. That may be impossible. The week before, a week or two before the election, just to go over some, or have her do a quick audio thing, going over everything one more time, as far as the mail-in ballots versus the voting early and stuff like that. But you can check us out on a previous episode. We definitely covered all of that. But the one thing that I want you to keep in mind is that. So I'm using 538 as far as the latest polls for North Carolina's governors. And the latest poll, this was done by the University of Massachusetts Lowell. This was done, and this was likely registered voters. Likely voters, which... the sample's a little small too, but this was done on the 19th, and it has Cooper up by 13. There was one done by Meredith College that was done on the 28th. He's up by 10. The one that I like the most is the Sierra Club New York Times Upshot, and also the Redford Wilson Strategies. Well, that one, not so much. But the New York Times has him up by 5. Cooper, who is the governor currently. The Suffolk, and then that was on the 18th. And then, so it still looks like it's like anywhere from high single point lead to a double point lead as far as what Cooper is going through right now. We'll see what happens after as far as his announcement today. As far as going into phase 3, I think that is kind of important to understand. Cooper has done a lot of good. He's had. Here's the thing, Cooper has struggled quite a bit because the GOP House and Senate, State House and Senate, is a supermajority. So there's not a lot. He can veto the best he can, and he can try to get his own stuff through. But unfortunately, he is mired down by that. However, with the districts being redrawn, and I'm not sure if they also redrew the state districts, but I think they did. I know that there's a lot of those state houses and state senates that are much more contentious now because of just the shift of people moving and everything. So I think there'll be a big difference as far as that's concerned. So I just want you to keep that in mind when you're looking at those elections, when you're looking at the Cooper election and everything. Is he is doing the best he can, being handcuffed and hogtied by a supermajority of the opposite party. So when you get out to vote, one of the big things is that you make sure that you're also voting Democratic down the line, especially on those state houses and state senates, because this is also a census year. I'll eventually get to say that properly. And so when you do that, that will also allow for him to be able to reshape the map a little bit more. I don't know how much more it can be reshaped, but at this point, maybe with having a Democratic House and Senate, they may be State House and State Senate, they may be able to put a lockdown bipartisan group to do, because that's the ultimate good goal, is to get a bipartisan group to actually set this up. And I want to eventually, once the election is over and we've all either cheered or found our way into Sweden, to basically at that point look at different ways that we can improve the electoral system as a whole. And I think that will be an interesting show for us to discuss. But one of the things I wanted to bring up about, Dan Forrest is that he's been doing a lot of this Christian stuff on his thing. And he's basically, he was in a congregation saying white supremacy stuff. And, there are people on the internet and stuff is like, well, as on Twitter and stuff like that, well, you can't really convince me that being a Christian is not being a white supremacist at this point. And I'm fighting a losing battle sometimes, I feel like. So it's important to understand why this is so important to me and why this fight means so much to me, and why I feel so tired sometimes, and why I keep fighting this fight with this, and why next week's episode is going to be probably my stronger one, my more angry one, because I'm going to be bringing up a lot of the stuff about how they're twisting it. But let's move to the Senate. So we have a senator by the name of Thom Tillis, and he is a wonderful human being. No, he's not. No. So there is an article, and all of these will be posted in the description and the YouTube, as well as on the page for our for the podcast when it's up. But basically a 3-time cancer survivor had, during the start of the coronavirus, when they basically lost their health care because their spouse lost their job, and they didn't have health care. And it's like, basically Thom Tillis and Thom Tillis' office was like, well, we're sorry, that's just tough on you. I hope you can get that worked out. This is a 3-time cancer survivor who is pleading for help about health insurance to try to get help and getting, help for their health insurance, because they need the health insurance because here's the thing, that's a pre-existing condition. So while they can't deny you right now, can't deny you any insurance on pre-existing conditions, they can definitely charge you more, or at least they could. And without health care, someone who is a pre-existing cancer survivor, and we were dealing with a virus that they're already immune compromised at that point, I can't believe how he feels, or how his office feels that's a good look, other than the fact that he really doesn't care, because that's just a voter, and it's only one voter. As long as he gets most of the other voters in, doesn't really matter, and let's be clear, and again, I brought this up last week, but I emailed and I called Thom Tillis for specifically for the purpose of the fact that back in 2006, and I have, and there'll be a link here. Back in 2016, I apologize. Thom Tillis was one of those people that says, oh, we shouldn't fill the seat with Merrick Garland during an election year because, the people of the United States should decide, with this election. And the election's already started. It was in February and March. The election hadn't started. We were in the primary season. There was no election yet. Okay? We are less than 40 days away from the election now. The election has started in many places. People are starting to get their mail-in ballots sent out, or they're able to early vote in some states and stuff like that. Voting for the actual president has already started, and they're trying to rush to get this woman who is basically, the handmaid's tale, onto the Supreme Court. So, and he's like done a 180. And I emailed him, and I basically addressed him as a Christian man. And I was like, look, you said this as a Christian man, as someone who says that they're a Christian. As someone who is a Christian, you should be a person of your faith. and you should believe and you should follow your beliefs, and you should hold those beliefs, and should keep your word and not lie, because that is what a Christian would do. Of course, he's going to do what he's going to do anyways, because none of them actually believe in the Christian faith. So that's one of those situations. So that being said, he's trying to push through their nominee less than 40 days into the cycle. So of course that's going to happen, and of course we can look at those poll numbers as well and see how well he's doing in the polls. Oh, Tom, you're not looking so well at all. You're down by almost double digits, in some polls, and at least by 6, an average of 6 in most polls, Tom. That's not looking good, Tom. No, that's not looking good at all. I'm so sorry, Tom. Again, this is why it's important to look at those down ballot polls and everything else. So it's interesting. Again, I'm using the right now. They're saying that 538 is basically saying that Cunningham is 63 out of 100 to win versus Thom Tillis 37 out of 100 to win for their election predictions. But there is more. So I've also listed some information about some of our women candidates for the state elections. And this is, of course, by the Emily's List, which is a prominent progressive listing for women who endorses women candidates who have strong progressive leads. So the first one is, of course, we're going with State Representative Linda Coleman. Has been a fierce. She is. So that's a state representative. Then and she, let's see, who is she? What is she running? She's currently serves as the director of state personnel, and she is. I'm trying to see here, so, but I don't see where. So then you've got Emily Marshall, who has been the Secretary of State since 1996, or she ran the first time in 1996, and she's been Secretary of State several times. She has a very good track record in the state, and of course, she has done everything she could to reform lobbying in the state and everything like that. We also have Janet Cowell. She is the treasurer of North Carolina, and she's one of the individuals that helped reshape the, which was not a very good plan at all initially, but reshape the healthcare plan for the state of North Carolina, which is actually a very good one. And we're one of the, and with her leadership, we're one of the 7 states in the nation that maintains a AAA bond rating, meaning that when we, ask for a bond or whatever for a loan, we have a very good rating. We pay it back and everything else. Then we have Beth Woods. She is our state auditor. I have no idea what they basically handle the money. It's kind of like the treasurer, but a little different. And then finally we have then what we're doing right now is then they're also going to be backing Yolanda Lewis Holley, Holley. She is running for lieutenant governor, and she has an interesting, and I apologize, that Emily's listing was not well done. I apologize. The press releasing wasn't, I had read it, and I'm sorry. but that will be listed as well as far as some of the other state house listings, but keep those in mind. Look up Emily's List for stuff like that, and you can get a good rating on what they stand for. But going back to lieutenant governor, the lieutenant governor that is running is Yolanda Lewis Hawley. And she has an interesting thing. It's called the Affordable Living Initiative. And her initiative, and I read over it a couple of times, and it's basically about helping with affordable housing, helping with, as she calls it, the ALI platform, which is basically a comprehensive legislative study and review of laws and policies that has hampered affordable housing. Eviction, expulsion programs, things like that. So what she's trying to do is, first off, get access to affordable and healthy foods. That's been very important, because here's the thing. Our school systems, if you have been in a school, and I know they're changing some of the foods that are served in schools, but schools do not serve the best and most healthiest lunches for our kids. And because, of course, kids are picky eaters by nature, because they want, if they have a choice between a salad, between like vegetables and a hot dog, they're going to take a hot dog. Most kids, not all, but helping kids eat healthier actually helps them develop healthier as humans, as their mental capacities and everything else. Also helps them develop physically healthier, and also helps if you build those habits early. Then when they become adults and stuff, they also become healthier eaters as adults and not eat an entire pizza in a day. Look, yesterday was really bad. Secondly, economic and workforce development. So helping job training, setting up job training for individuals so that they can find jobs that finding the person and the job and making and having them suit together, because not everybody is going to be can be a executive. It's not a bad thing, because executives, I have my issues with them. Some people are really good with their hands, and just finding those individuals and then and helping them explore how they can use that to their advantage. There's that old axiom that if you work at doing something you enjoy, you never work a day in your life. So if there are mechanics that, the shady, back in the day, it's a little more complicated now with the computers in the cars, but back in the day, you had the shady tree mechanics that they did it because they loved cars and they loved working with their hands and stuff like that. So finding those individuals and putting them in the skilled labor force and things like that, and helping people become skilled laborers so that they get good jobs. I do not diminish food workers. I do not diminish construction workers, because that is a skilled labor in my opinion. Just because they're shoveling asphalt doesn't mean that that's not a skilled labor, because God knows I can't skilled labor that, things like that. So, helping people and working on that is extremely important as far as that. Working on more public transportation, because here's the thing. Right now in the state of North Carolina especially, we are built in, for the most part, in a countied system, meaning that each county handles their transportation. But when you're looking at, we have a couple of major metropolitan areas in our state that are decently sized. Charlotte is one of them. The Raleigh-Durham area is another one. The Wilmington area is another one. The Winston-Salem, Greensboro area is another one. But they're all encapsulated inside a bunch of different counties. Okay, the suburbs and everything else. So I live in a suburb county of the Charlotte metro area. That's what it's called, the metro area. I'm in a suburb county. So my county handles its own transportation. Well, that's an issue, because the problem is let's say I want to go to Charlotte. I can't get on a bus at the corner of my house and then get to Charlotte. I would have to Drive to a place that is a pickup place for one of the few places that Charlotte has a pickup inside my county, and then I'd have to go to the central hub, and then I'd have to go to wherever I needed to go. So that's an issue. We need to work on transportation that way and expand it. We also need to work on the highway systems and stuff like that, but we also need to work on affordable public transportation. I think that's extremely important, and I think that helps with as far as building the state up. If you have a robust public transportation that handles more than just a county that has a robust one, because Mecklenburg's working on theirs, but the thing is, it's in just their county. So once you leave Mecklenburg County, once you leave the county that Charlotte, North Carolina is in, that at that point evaporates, and then there's no point, because as soon as you leave that county, then you're on your own again. And so that becomes an issue. Public education, because we do not do well in our public education, so we definitely need to work on that a great deal. So that is another. So she is working on basically trying to build a more robust public system and public image for us. Now, again, I mentioned this, and in the state of North Carolina, you can get a sample look at your ballot. I would suggest you do that, especially before you go out to vote, a couple of days before. Pull up that sample ballot. Any names that you don't know, if you are someone who doesn't vote straight ticket, that's perfectly fine. Sure. Look up those names, and everything else. Look up the judges that are going to be on your sample ballot, but definitely, especially on the lower ballot, pardon me, especially on the lower ballot, look up the county commissioners and any of those that don't have delineations of party. Look them up, see where they land. Look up the judges, because state of North Carolina, we vote in some of our judges. So look up those. Look up the sheriffs. Look up all their records. You can find them. They're public knowledge. It may take a few minutes, but take an hour. Set aside an hour before you go vote. Not immediately before you go vote, but set aside an hour with that sample ballot and sit down and do a little investigation. And it's very important that you go into that voter box, or before you fill out your ballot and send it back, or however you do it, that you are educating yourself as a voter. Because when you do it once, and then you start doing it again and again, and then you understand why it's important for that process. And I think that's very important. Of course, early voting, and also go to, for any other sign-ups or questions or anything, Stephen Colbert has a website that funnels you per state to where you need to go to either register to vote or to get your ballot mailed to you or whatever. Just go to betterknowaballot.com/NC for North Carolina, but whatever your state's initials are, and that'll get you the information. Also get you a cute little video that you can watch. So before I get to this week's Carrot and Stick, Brother Bowie, will you lead us in a word of prayer?
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
So first off, our carrots and sticks. First off, I have 2 carrots and then 2 sticks. It's been a busy week, so First off, to the 73.13 million viewers of last night's debate. I watched and did a live reaction to it and such, and you can watch that. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes about total, with preambles and everything else involved. And bless each and every one of you for putting up with that as well. As one reporter called it, a shit show, which I believe is unfair to both shit and a show. But it was just horrible. Again, I will probably save my full reaction after I've been able to mull over this and also mull over the VP, and I will do that in 2 weeks. So just go over that and have a discussion with that. That will probably be what I would call a freebie episode, to where I can just go off on that for a little bit. My second carrot goes to all the campaign workers and volunteers who are working hard to get out the vote in these very trying times. Please keep up the amazing work. Though some people may not see you, I do, and I'm proud of each and every one of you for trying to save this country. September, especially you, I know you are working as hard as you can to save this country, and I messaged her last night during this debate and everything after it was over, and she was just like, well, that's why we're working so hard now. That's why we're going to save this country. And I appreciate her so very much for being in these trenches, especially while they're throwing bombs, not literally at this moment, at us, but it feels like she is in the trenches at the Battle of the Psalms, and I am so proud of her. And so this is also a special little thank you to September. So before we get to our stick, Sister Franklin, do you have any thoughts on our sticks today?
Don't you blaspheme in here. Don't you blaspheme in here.
Now for our sticks. So the first one, and I'm quoting this from the Snopes article because a lot of people had posted this to Snopes, and I like that Snopes basically make sure that these things are true in certain requests. So, did a Christian crowdfunding campaign raise money for Kyle Rittenhauser? Who is Kyle Rittenhauser? Well, Kyle Rittenhauser is a 17-year-old who is accused of killing 2 people at a protest against police brutality, I can't even say that, in Kenosha, Wisconsin on August 25th, 2020. He had his mom drive him there, and he walked around with his AK-47, and he shot 3 people, killing 2 of them and injuring another one. And the police let him go until he was finally caught and arrested, and he is currently in jail on first-degree murder charges. Did they do that? Yes, they did. According to this, a self-described Christian crowdfunding website was hosted to a fundraising that supposedly helped pay the Rittenhauser's legal defense fund. According to this, they've raised like over $500,000 for him. So I have a few questions here. Last I checked, in my Bible, and again, I really need to find this Bible that the conservatives are reading, that it must be completely written in crayon and completely different than the Bible that I read, which claims to be the Holy Bible. But I don't remember anywhere in my holy text where Jesus said, "Go forth and murder all ye find." Also, just in case, my Bible says that you should go out and heal people and preach to them and offer comfort and healing, not shooting them. And just out of sure, even if those who like to preach the Old Testament when it comes to like gay marriage and abortion and stuff like that, may I also remind you that murder is against one of the big 10, thou shalt not murder. This was not a war, because it's all kind of vague in a bit, because God did a lot of war, and I understand that. So, but as far as this was cold-blooded murder. He went out and he shot 3 people who were not. This was not a war zone. This was a protest, and he went out and caused violence, and he went out and took the life of 2 people. And how dare you, as a Christian organization, support that? As someone who is basically acting as a white supremacist, how dare you support that? Shame on you. But I have another preacher who is an idiot. I could have had 3 today, but I decided I'll save one for next week. So, this was initially reported to me by September, who sent it to me, and this was initially, I saw this on Newsweek, who reported it from Right Wing Watch, who is a website and a group that watches for radicalism. And so there was a preacher who, Pastor Robert Henderson, used his Sunday service at his Radiant Church in Waco, Texas. Of course it's Waco, Texas. To brag that a prayer he delivered last week in Washington, D.C. was responsible for removing Ruth Bader Ginsburg from the Supreme Court. He claims it was no accident, citing 1 Peter 5:1, which he said, "Your enemies, the devil, prowl like the roaring lion, looking for someone to devour." Henderson said, as he was told by God to ask for the judgment against the lion in the spirit realm that was seeking to devour. Henderson claimed that the lion spirit is connected to the natural judiciary system via 2 Timothy 4:16 through 18. And then he goes on to say, "We were in a meeting on Monday night in D.C., and I told them, look, we need to go into the courts of heaven right now while we're on site in D.C., and we need to shut the mouth of the lion's judiciary." Pardon me. We need to ask for the judgment against the lion that has actually been devouring and intending to devour the Supreme Court. We need to get the judgment against this lion that Paul said God shut its mouth. And so it led us to this place. And guess what? Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away. Trump will establish a new Supreme Court justice. That is no accident. First off, fuck you. Second off, no. How dare you? How dare you, sir, claim to be a Christian and claim to be a reverend in this day and age and state that you caused the death of someone with your prayer, that you prayed for someone's death? That is not what we're supposed to do as Christians. That is not what you're supposed to do as a reverend. How dare you do that? How dare you claim that as a victory? How dare you even think that's a victory? That you think that you have the right to someone's life by claiming that. I am a Christian, and yes, I do believe in pro-choice, but I'm also vehemently against the death penalty, which I'm pretty sure you are not, because I do not believe that we have the right to take the life of someone else. I don't believe that a selection of cells that are less than 4 weeks or a couple of weeks, old is a human being. I do not believe that. There is When you look at the case law and Roe v. Wade, and everything else, and you look at the past history, and we've discussed this. We've discussed where even the quickening didn't count as that. As far back in Christian history, it's only been in recent times, and it's only because Christian men and Christian faith wants to control women's bodies. It has nothing to do with whether they're a baby or not. But I am vehemently against the death penalty in all forms, because I do not believe in it. There are people that I, as a human being, believe should have the death penalty, yes. But ultimately, as a Christian, at the end of the day, I have no right to that human life. That is not my judgment. My judgment is that, yes, they should be punished, and yes, they should be put in jail. And yes, they should have as much punishment as possible, but they should also be treated humanely and as humans, because the Christ told us to treat prisoners humanely in his own words. So I don't believe in the death penalty, and I sure as hell don't believe in praying for other people's deaths. And I try my hardest to be as Christian and as honorable about certain things. I don't wish the harm on others. I don't wish harm on anyone. I sometimes slip because I am human, and I ask for forgiveness. And I don't want harm on people, because that is not my place. So how dare you even insinuate that you wish the death and you wish the harm on another human being and claim to be a Christian? Because you cannot. You should walk away from your pastorship, and you should walk into the wilderness until you find your Christianity again. And that's what I've got to say about that. And all of those other, and we'll get to this next week, because you think this is it? Oh no, this is just the tip of the iceberg for next week. So this is kind of a preview of how next week is going to be Barney being very preachy. So I apologize, and you can skip the episode if it's going to be too much for you. But for all those other preachers who are the same way, you need to take a walk into the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights, and you need to find your faith, because you've lost it. That being said, thank you for joining us at Heresy and Hearsay. I'm Reverend Barney, and you can follow me on Twitter at SethRothII, and you can find the show on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and any podcast catcher, as well as our website. Just Google us. You don't forget our Patreon page, where $2 a month can help us keep us going. You can also find my partner on Twitch and Twitter at 9of12. That's NINEOF12. And you can hear her on the Geek Girls podcast. Also, if you happen to get a phone call from her saying, hey, get out the vote, or if you want to make any phone calls to her, or make phone calls with her, or she can help you in any way, you know how to find her on the Facebook or Twitter. Hit her up, and she will definitely get you to the proper individuals so that you can start making phone calls as well. Thank you again for listening, and bless your hearts.